Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. You've got your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. I've been so deep into my new MacBook Pro, the M1 MacBook Pro. This is not going to be an entire podcast again about the MacBook Pro. I'm 2 or 3 in a row. That's too much. I know I'll talk about it in the future, and I will talk about it a little bit here. But it's too much MacBook Pro for a little while. I want to change the subject a little bit. But what I will say is I've been so just preoccupied with it. Not just learning the MacBook Pro, not just kind of readjusting to Mac OS, but really the bulk of it has been this project that I'm undertaking as far as making a YouTube video about my experience thus far with the MacBook Pro. Not just coming from PC to Mac as a daily driver. I've used Macs in the past, but I've never used a Mac as a daily driver. So it's kind of about that transition, things I've noticed coming from PC to Mac as a daily driver. But the main thing is, and I kind of didn't anticipate this, is the learning curve and the time investment in learning DaVinci Resolve. If you are a subscriber to my YouTube channel, it's just Geek Therapy Radio Podcast on YouTube. I've done all my videos. I'm most comfortable with Sony Vegas. Is it even still called Sony Vegas? It's Vegas Pro 15, I think, is the version I have, and that's what I've done almost all of my video editing with. But Vegas is obviously not supported in Mac OS. So I've known for a couple years, and a few of you have suggested, you've reached out saying, hey, you really should give Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve a look. A few other people, Colin said, hint, hint, wink, wink, Colin from This Does Not Compute, saying, you know what is native to Mac? Final Cut Pro, which I agree. I just don't want to spend $300 on software right now, and DaVinci Resolve is free, and DaVinci Resolve also is cross-platform, meaning if I'm on my Windows PC, I can work on the project in DaVinci Resolve, and I can also work on the project in Mac on DaVinci Resolve. So a major chunk of my preoccupation and time this week at least has been learning DaVinci Resolve, and I've come a long way. And Asaf, I got your email, and I may very well take you up on that. Asaf, I've had him on the show before. He's from Israel. He has been trained in DaVinci Resolve and offered to help out. And I'm thinking, I'm just spitballing right now, Asaf, if you're listening, I'm just spitballing, maybe doing a podcast about DaVinci Resolve. And I'm kind of back and forth on that because on the one hand, it's kind of hard to visualize what we're talking about in DaVinci Resolve if you're just listening to an audio podcast of it. On the other hand, why not? Like seriously, I mean, it's a case of it's not going to hurt anybody to put that kind of podcast out there, and it can still help. You know how it can help is if anybody has dabbled for a few minutes or so, an hour or so with DaVinci Resolve, they have a pretty good mental picture of how the software works. They have a good mental picture of how the timeline works and the different windows and the settings and things like that. They've got the mental image of DaVinci Resolve in their mind. So maybe doing a podcast about DaVinci Resolve will not only help me to visualize in my mind's eye what's going on with Resolve and then go apply it to Resolve, but maybe it would help somebody listening to do the same thing. Maybe if it's someone who's never used DaVinci Resolve, hears a podcast about DaVinci Resolve, it might, spur them to actually use it. And I will say thus far, DaVinci Resolve is amazing. It seems like it has so many more features than Sony Vegas does. I can't speak for more features on Final Cut. I don't think there's more features than Final Cut. I don't think there's more features than Adobe. I don't think there's more features than in any kind of popular NLE. But for me, it seems like there's much more powerful features in DaVinci Resolve compared to Vegas Pro 15 that I'm coming to. That said, again, there's that learning curve. How do I do things? One of the questions that I have in my mind that I have a pin in right now, and I'm going to get to as soon as I'm done recording the podcast, is I know how to click over to the effects window I know how to color grade individual clips and apply effects to individual clips in the color window or in Fusion. But what I'm curious about right now, and I know that a lot of you listening who are familiar with Resolve are going to scream at your Bluetooth speaker or your car speakers, your headphones or whatever, is how do you just apply effects to the entire track? Like in Vegas and in audio recording software, there's an effects track and you just pop in effects. Like for Vegas, for instance, there's just an effects track and you just pop in, sharpening, you pop in contrast, you pop in black and white, you pop in simulate TV, all the effects you can just apply to the entire track. You can apply the color grading as a better example to the entire track. So any clip that you put in that track takes that effect. It applies to the whole track. I don't know how to do that yet in DaVinci Resolve. It seems like such a simple thing. And I know that when I hop online here in a few minutes when I'm done with the show, it's just going to be a doy. Of course, that's the way to do it. But it's just a different way to do it than in Vegas. And there's a lot of those different ways to do things from Vegas to DaVinci. I do notice in DaVinci that you can set up your shortcuts to help ease that learning curve if you're coming from Final Cut, if you're coming from Premiere and a couple of other video editors, a couple of other NLE video editors, but there's no option to copy the shortcuts from Sony Vegas. So I've had to kind of learn those things. I have to learn how to do my ripple edits. I knew with a couple keystrokes how to do ripple edits in Vegas, and it's taken a little bit of looking around and research and retraining my brain how to do ripple edits in Resolve and DaVinci Resolve, and it's a little bit different, and it seems like there could be an easier way to do it. I've gotten pretty speedy with doing Command B, which does a blade cut right where the transport is, versus if you just press B alone, it turns into the cut tool, the razor tool, and you can put the cut wherever you want. But Command B puts the cut right where the transport is, right where the playhead is, and that's what I wanted. So it's little shortcuts like that. And that's basically what's been taking up my time this week. Oh yeah, my son too. Having a little infant baby child is also kind of time consuming, and when I'm not complaining about it at all. I would not trade the experience of raising Riker for the world. It's the most rewarding thing. It's the best tinker project I have ever undergone. It's amazing raising a toddler, or not a toddler, an infant at this point. And I walk around the house when I'm trying to soothe him before bed or soothe him in the middle of the night, trying to settle him back down to go back to sleep. I walk around the house and I tell him, we're going to have the walk and talk the talk. And I just kind of sing to him and say silly things to him as we walk around and bounce around. I say, we're walking a walk and we're talking a talk, talking about toots, talking about peeps, peeps and toots and poops and peeps and poops and peeps and peeps and poops. Just kind of little songs like that, mostly having to do with peeps and poops, just my voice to soothe him. And one of the things I tell him as an infant looking into his big, beautiful baby eyes is one day you're going to be 12 years old, or maybe younger than that, maybe older than that. You're going to turn into a little pickle, and I'm going to miss these days in late 2020. It's hard to say you'd miss 2020, but I will personally miss these days in late 2020, holding my little perfect, beautiful infant son when he's 16 years old and being a complete a-hole. I'm going to think back to December 2020. Why can't you just be this little baby forever? But be this little cute baby forever, but potty trained and able to go to college and smart and drive a car. The most trouble you give me right now is waking your mom and I up in the middle of the night, mostly your mom, and changing your diapers and hearing you scream. That's really nothing. I was a teenager, and I know it's going to get so much worse. There's actually going to be things that disappoint me and hurt me. He's going to do things later in life that actually hurt me. Changing a loaded diaper, it's crazy. And I know all of you parents out there listening, you know this. When your infant, I will say infant, when your infant has a big, giant, just diaper busting blowout, you're not mad, you're proud. Good boy. That was a big one. And you're happy because you know that they're going to feel better. You know that before the blowout, they're straining. They sound like a middle-aged man on the toilet. Sorry to be so graphic, but like a tiny middle-aged man on the toilet. You just hear them in their crib, just in their what do you call it, rocker or whatever you have them in, not a crib yet, but you're just going like in the middle of the night, and you're just like, go boy, you can do it. I believe in you. Let it out. Push. It's just like I told his mom, push, Riker boy. Then you change his diaper a little bit later on. Sometimes you hear it come out. Very often you hear it come out. And again, I'm sorry I'm being so descriptive, but what I'm saying is that if you heard the same noise coming out of a grown man, you'd be like, that's disgusting. But you hear it coming out of an infant, you're just like, yes, that is so awesome. I'm so overjoyed. Like, I want to give you a medal for pushing out such a huge blowout turd. I'm so proud of you. It makes me so happy, little baby boy, that you took a big 300-pound biker dump in your little 9-pound Riker diaper. And if that ain't poetry, I don't know what is. So I'm having just the best time raising my son and really holding on to this time. I know that it won't last forever. And it's kind of like one of the only bits of advice I've taken to heart from all the unsolicited advice you get when you have a kid. But the best piece of unsolicited advice is, thus far that I've noticed, is cherish these moments right now. Cherish when he's tiny and he can't backtalk, and all you got to worry about is being annoyed that he needs to be fed every couple hours, maybe being annoyed that you can't just go up and play Microsoft Flight Simulator for 4 hours until 4 a.m. You have to take care of the baby. But cherish looking into his eyes. You know what I notice? And I'm sorry, I didn't mean for this to be a whole podcast about Riker, about my son, but there's things I'm noticing. It's like any Tinker project. I'll tell you, I'm just making a whole 15-minute video, a YouTube video about things I've noticed about the MacBook M1. Now I'm telling you things that I've noticed from a tinkering kind of mindset that I've noticed about raising a human baby. One of the things that's amazing to me is since he doesn't have teeth, since he isn't old enough yet, and since his gutty works, his organs and stuff are all so new, I'm amazed that he doesn't have bad breath. Like, baby breath smells good. And I don't know if I would say good, but it's kind of like kitten's breath or like little puppy breath. It's not gross yet. He doesn't have bad, disgusting crevices between his teeth and tartar and plaque and all sorts of things going on in his mouth yet. He just got gums and a tongue. And so his breath, he'll like breathe right on you, whimper on you, and it's like, oh, you sweet little baby breath. And the only bad smells that he makes right now are, well, he lets out these massive toots. I need to vent about this. I need to tell you about this. For those of you who haven't had an infant yet, it's absolutely bamboozling how huge an infant's farts are. It's crazy. When I use the analogy of a 300-pound biker, let's say this 300-pound biker has just been he just cruised almost nonstop from Las Vegas to Los Angeles. I don't know why I'm being so specific here, and maybe aren't a lot of motorcycles that can get that kind of range on one tank, but maybe there are, those big highway cruises. Anyways, picture a big 300-pound biker, bandana, stereotypical bandana, got the leather on, sweating. It's 110 degrees between LA and Las Vegas, and he's just been sitting on that bike in those leather pants, and he just ate a huge, like 17 tacos at Del Taco. And just picture when he gets to the biker bar in Los Angeles and immediately uses the bathroom. Picture those noises. 300-pound biker full of Del Taco. But now just apply it to a little tiny thing the size of a teddy bear that weighs 9 pounds and has big googly eyes and looking at you. And curling his little baby lip and just ripping just the hugest. Like, it sometimes I ask him, boy, did you just tear yourself a new one? Like, how did something that big come out of something so tiny? My wife I promise I'll get off this particular subject in a moment. My wife says she's come up with a new game, and basically the game is who done it. Anytime there's a big noise like that, she says, "All right, who done it?" me or baby boy. And what I've noticed is if it sounds huge, if it sounds like somebody who outweighs me by 100 pounds, it's my little tiny 9-pound son. That's who made that big window busting, like sheetrock shattering blast. It came out of him. Oh, all of these things I'm noticing raising a toddler. And every night I can't wait to come home and just first relieve my wife of her duty. I know it's a miracle and it's a wonderful thing raising a baby, but I'm gone for 9 hours a day. And that can't be, it's a job, it's work. So I love to come home and hold my warm little baby son, Riker, in my arms and see how my number one's doing. Ask if he's been good for mommy, check in on the day, if he's been good. It's my favorite thing in the world to do right now. When I get free moments, I have the MacBook open and I'm researching or studying more or making little edits to this video because I'm dead set on this being my first DaVinci Resolve video. And that's kind of a good segue into a point that just kind of came to my mind right now. Like I mentioned several minutes ago, before all the poops and blasts and toots and sharts and 300-pound biker Del Taco blasts. Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio, by the way, if you're a first-time listener. This is what I do around here. Before I got into all that, I mentioned that I have been meaning to put more time into DaVinci Resolve for the past couple years, since I've been doing the show especially, and I've had people reaching out, hey, you should really look into DaVinci Resolve. But I've been putting it off because we humans, we get set in our ways. And I'm not saying that that inherently is a bad thing, but even us geeks, we get set in our ways and we are used to what we're used to. A lot of us don't want to make a transition to Mac. We say it's because Macs are expensive, and that is absolutely viable and absolutely true. But a bigger part of it is that Mac OS and navigating your way around Mac is just different than Windows. And any time there's a learning curve, it's like it's resistance. It's throwing a wrench in the works of our daily life, doing something that we're not used to. It slows us down. Like right now, I think a good analogy for me switching over to Mac and doing DaVinci Resolve at the same time is like I'm walking through a big swampy mud pit. And as I'm walking through, like my shoes are getting sucked off in the mud. My socks got sucked off in the last step. My pant leg got sucked off on the next step. My pants have come completely off in the next step. Sooner or later, I'm just like laying naked in the mud, sticking in there, wondering, what the heck am I doing? I'm looking to the other edge of the shore. Like, I can see the shore now. I'm that close. But it feels like going to Mac OS and learning DaVinci Resolve at the same time. It feels like punching on the water. It feels like those dreams you have where you're trying to run as fast as you can, away from something, but you can't run. Like you were running. You were putting all your effort into running away from this thing, but you just can't gain any traction. You can't gain any speed. That's what it feels like, not only learning Mac OS, but learning DaVinci Resolve at the same time. It's difficult. And we don't like to do that very often in life. We kind of drag our feet. No, I don't want to, even though I hear you all saying you should look into DaVinci Resolve, I'm just like, I know I like just got good with Vegas. Like they say, get good. And I just got good with Sony Vegas. And I was like, no, DaVinci Resolve, it's going to be a whole thing, a whole nother. But all of us have to learn that the best way to actually learn something is eventually we're just going to have to rip off that Band-Aid. Eventually, we're just going to have to dive into the deep end of the pool. We keep dipping our toes in, the water's too cold, or the water's too hot, or whatever it is. Sooner or later, and we're making up all these excuses, I don't really feel like swimming right now. Sooner or later, you cannonball. You cannonball into the deep end, and the only way to get out is if you learn to swim. And that's exactly what I'm doing with DaVinci Resolve. I just said, you know what? I'm switching to Mac. I'm putting this kind of pile of effort onto me anyways. Let's just learn Resolve on top of getting used to Mac. Let's just dive in. The only way that I'm going to get out of this is when I finally post the video to YouTube, I'll have made it to the other side of the pool, out of the pool safely. I'll have learned how to edit in DaVinci Resolve, and I can look back and be proud of what I've learned and achieved. Every single day, and this can apply to anything we do, any hobbies that we're into, every single day that we make progress in a hobby, it's something we can be proud of. Every little shortcut that I learn in DaVinci Resolve, I'm extremely proud of it. And that's kind of the built-in reward to doing these things that are kind of difficult to dive into, is that every little tread of water you make, you get that much closer to the shore, you get that much closer to the edge of the pool, you've made a lap in the pool, you get just every little splash is closer to that goal, and you can feel really, really good about it because you can remember the time when you were standing outside of that pool, making all the excuses and being scared of jumping in. And then you jump in and you make this little progress, little progress, little progress. Sooner or later, before you know it, you're on the other side, pulling yourself out saying, I did it. I did it. And it's such a great feeling. And it's why geeks like us tinker with so many things and get into so many things. It's not just so that we can have the knowledge of how to do those things. It's that we get an endorphin rush, like a valuable, credible, viable endorphin rush that doesn't come from beer, that doesn't come from drugs, that doesn't come from any sort of anything that hurts another person, doesn't come from being nasty, doesn't come from being vicious to other people, doesn't come from being mean. It comes from actual good effort that enriches us as people. So we have these little endorphin rushes every, part of the way through these hobbies, learning these hobbies every step of the way. My wife and I watched recently a show on, I think it was on Netflix, called The Queen's Gambit. I highly recommend it. I always like shows that are period shows, and this one takes place in the, I believe it's the 60s, late 50s into the 60s. And it's kind of like a Mad Men type thing where like the sets are really great. They have all these old cars, and it's really well done, and it puts you back in that era. I love stuff like that. But I've also had a passing interest my entire life in chess. Chess is one of those games, one of those hobbies, if you will, that is, it's relatively easy to learn. I mean, it's relatively easy to remember what a rook does, what the queen does, how the king can move, how a pawn moves, all of that stuff. Did I say brook? Because I definitely meant rook. But that's all I'm saying. It's relatively easy to learn how the pieces move. So it's an easy-ish game to learn, but it's virtually impossible to master. So every once in a while, you have these savants come along that are just inexplicably good at chess. They can see dozens of moves ahead, and they have all these. They have all these openings memorized. Like I can't even begin to describe how many different openings in chess. To me, as a layperson who basically knows how the pieces move, I didn't know that, hey, if you move this particular pawn up one space as opposed to two spaces, that's a particular kind of opening, and that basically sets the tone for the entire game. White moves first, and if you move this pawn two spaces up on this row, that's called the Excelsior opening or whatever, and your opponent knows that. He or she knows what that opening is, and then will counter with a certain named counter. And there's all these memorizations of the board and how the pieces move, and you have to apply those 6 or 7. What is it? Like a good chess player can think is something like half a dozen moves ahead, and that's like a basic chess player. If I move my piece here, that means they will likely move this piece here. And if they move this piece here, that means I'm going to do this, which means they might do this, which means I'll do this, which means they might do this. And you're thinking 6 or 7 steps ahead. And it's an incredibly cerebral game. Easy to learn, almost impossible to master. I say that, not that it compares in any way, shape, or form, but Rocket League on the computer, on the PC, on the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Rocket League, the video game, I say it's one of those games that's easy to learn as far as the basic functions. Like you know how to make the car go forward, you know how to make the car go backwards, you know how to jump, then you learn how to double jump, then you learn how to flip, and you learn the basic mechanics of the game, and you know that the object of the game is to get the ball into the opposition's goal, into your opponent's goal. So the basics are there. You learn how to move the car around, and you know that the goal of everything is to put the ball in the other person's goal. Easy to learn. Extremely difficult to master. Rocket League is extremely difficult to master in a different way, in a dexterity type of way. It's different than chess. But the way the car moves through the medium, the way the car moves kind of through the air, it's all physics-based. So it's not, you steer your wheel left and right in the air, and your car will just rotate in the air. It's not going to actually change direction until you apply boost in the air. It's kind of like a jet ski on the water. A lot of beginners on jet skis, a big dilemma that they have is that they think that if they don't give it throttle, if they turn what's the handlebars, if they turn the handlebars to the left without giving it throttle, there's no rudder back there, at least not in most jet skis. There's no rudder back there, so you can turn the handles to the left all you want, and the jet ski continues to go straight. The way the jet ski actually starts to turn is by giving it throttle, and that's the same kind of way Rocket League works once your car has left the ground. And it's so nuanced. It's so nuanced. If you've ever watched E-League or competitive esports and they're playing Rocket League, and you see the way that these players are moving that car through the air, and they make it look so effortless. They go for these it's unofficial kind of style points. They flip the car around through the air, all these flourishes that they don't need to do. It's just kind of showing off, and it makes it look so easy. It is, but then you put a beginner, and you're like, okay, do that, beginner. Do that, noob. No, impossible. And it's so daunting to think. You think from the beginning of playing Rocket League, I will never get good at this game. I will never do it. There's so much nuance. There's so much fine touch to this that I can never compete with this. In real life, golf, the first time you play golf, it's impossible. You've watched it on TV so many times. You think golf is just a boring game. There's nothing to it. It's so boring. And then you get out there and try it, and it's infuriating how hard it is. Infuriating how difficult it is to hit a golf ball straight or reasonably straight. Make the head of the club make contact with the ball in the first place. I don't even like using drivers when I golf. I say I'm a decent golfer. What I mean is I can keep up. I don't know what my handicap is, 500, something crazy, but I'm good enough. It's not 500. It's probably like 30. You know, if 72, what's a normal par for a normal course? Like, let's say it's 72 strokes on a normal course. My par is probably, maybe like 30, 40. I next time I got to kind of keep track of that. But the point is, I'm good enough to keep up. I can golf with anybody and keep the game moving. And that's how I feel how good I am at Rocket League. I'm not Kronovi, I'm not any of the world's best players, but I'm good enough to keep the game moving, good enough to score, good enough to defend, but I am not an expert at all. I'm good enough to have fun with it. Going back to chess, I know how to move the pieces in the chessboard, but I have not even begun to scratch the surface with how difficult it is to try to become better at chess. Wrapping it all back around, that's how I feel right now in DaVinci Resolve, the video editor. I feel like I'm just beginning to get my legs underneath me. I'm just beginning to walk barely, like I'm holding onto a guardrail. I'm just learning how to walk. I feel like my son is going to feel when he learns to walk. My son, he knows how to get his feet under him. It seems like he does. He's so strong. He's a strong little boy. He just pushes. He pushes so much. I won't go on about that, but I feel like a toddler, like an infant. Feel like an infant with DaVinci Resolve. But to start wrapping this all up, it's so worth it. Whatever you have been putting off for years, like a hobby that you've been putting off for years, or maybe it's a hobby or a geek interest that you dabbled in like 20 years ago and you put it away because it became too difficult. You came to this kind of roadblock. I did this all the time. I still do this all the time with video games. I can't think of a Final Fantasy that I've actually beat. I don't think I've ever actually beat any Final Fantasy, truth be told. Like I play Final Fantasy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I've played them all. I've Final Fantasy 13, I'm probably 30% through. 13, that came out in like 2012 or something like that. But Final Fantasy is one of my favorite games in the world, but I've never actually just beat Final Fantasy. It's for two reasons. Usually it's because I don't feel like I've ground hard enough, like I grinded hard enough. I didn't bring my experience points up hard enough. And I get to this point, for instance, Final Fantasy 12 Revenant Wings on the Nintendo DS is probably one of my favorite Final Fantasies ever. Maybe I'm alone in that. Kind of like Tactics, but kind of not. Anyways, Revenant Wings, I'm stuck in a place that I've been stuck in since 2009. And every time I pick up Revenant Wings, I forget, why did I put this down? And then I open the map up. I'm like, oh yeah, I am stupidly underpowered for this boss. I'm at a roadblock. I don't think I've done enough kind of grinding in the past. I didn't do something right in the back end of this thing, or in the front end of this thing, to make me prepared for this boss fight. So now when I pick up Final Fantasy 12, I basically go around to kind of extra side quests and things like that to kind of build up my experience and build up my ability so that I can beat this boss. And that's kind of a good metaphor for life and for these hobbies. If you have a hobby like that you've put down 10 years ago because you came to some roadblock, when is the best time? Like, when are you going to jump back into it? Like, do you have enough interest to jump back into it? At a certain point, it's going to keep gnawing at you in the back of your head. Gosh, that friggin'... We do this all the time. If you're kind of mechanically minded and you work on motorcycles, for instance. What's up, Brian? You work on motorcycles and this part, like, it gets to you, like, I can't figure out how to do this. I can't figure out how to make this work. And maybe you leave it alone for a while and it kicks your butt for days, weeks, months, maybe even years. And then once a day you say, I'll get back to it. I'll see if I can figure something out. And then you figure it out in like 5 minutes. How many of those kind of loose ends do we have in life, not just with hobbies, but with anything, that all it takes is time away from it, that when you come back to it with a little bit more experience and a little bit more wisdom, maybe you see the problem. Oh yeah, I know how to fix this. And that can kind of rekindle your interest in that thing. Like, maybe if I get back into chess, I'll kind of rekindle, oh yeah, it's all kind of making sense to me now. I can enjoy playing chess rather than just playing, on the computer versus the computer. Maybe I can actually get good enough to play another human being. Learn enough along the way to get those little sporadic endorphin rushes. And we can apply that kind of mentality to anything. I'm applying it to DaVinci Resolve. Every time I learn a new keystroke, little endorphin rush, a good one, from a good quality place. Like I've mentioned, you want to get into Rocket League and you do something good in Rocket League, little endorphin rush. Oh, I learned something. Painting. Oh, it's all making sense to me. How to draw fingers and hands. Like, those are the hardest things to draw, apparently, in art, fingers and hands. Like, if you're trying to be a realist, knuckles and skin ripples and things and tendons and stuff in the hand. Extremely difficult. But you keep making little progress. Oh, that one looks a little bit better than the last time. That hand looks a little better than the last one I drew. You get that little, like, surge. Oh, yeah. And that's what keeps you going. So, to wrap up the podcast, all I will kind of leave you with is this. If there's something on the back burner that you've had there for weeks, days, weeks, months, years, or whatever, maybe consider getting back into it in earnest, diving right back into it, kind of setting that goal for yourself. Like, I can't get out of this until I make a little bit of progress here. And it doesn't matter what the progress is, just make a little bit of progress. Learning guitar. I tell people when they learn how to play guitar, you're going to hate it. I mean, the first couple weeks, few days you do it, you're going to get so bummed out that you hate it. And put it down. When that becomes the issue, once you start kind of looking at that guitar or that instrument and saying, I associate that thing now with pain or frustration, put it down for a while once you get it to that pain and frustration. Not forever, just for a little while. Then come back to it with a fresh set of fingers, a fresh mind, and make just a little bit of progress, no matter what the progress is. Just make a little bit of progress in whatever that old hobby is or that new hobby is that you've been wanting to pick up or that you've forgotten about or haven't picked up in a while. Just make a little progress, because when you make that little bit of progress, you get that little endorphin rush, and that pushes you. It's a huge motivator to get that next bit of progress. And before you know it, you have got good. So I hope these shower thoughts basically is what I've been doing for the last 35 minutes. Hope these shower thoughts help some of you maybe pick up that thing that you put down to get frustrated with. Just make a little bit of progress. Like, force yourself to make a little bit of progress, because you force yourself at first and then it'll feel good. Oh, I made that progress. It feels good to have something tangible that I've done with my own hands, with my own brains, with my own heart, with my own emotions. I've done something. I've made progress here. I have new skills now that I didn't have 5 minutes ago before I started this project. Just try to make a little bit of progress in some hobby, a new hobby or an old hobby. And I know you'll thank yourself for it. Thank you so much for listening to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast today. I hope you are all doing wonderful. I'm getting more emails now than ever from all of you, from around the world, the United States and mostly around the world. Thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. And I do hear all your suggestions. I do read all of the emails. Absolutely. I love hearing from you. Keep them coming. If you like Geek Therapy Radio, maybe tell some family and friends about it. I hope it's a little different than podcasts that you usually listen to in some sort of way, maybe good, different, bad, different. I don't know, a little bit different. The growth of my show has been a slow burn. It is, by listening that I'm not saying sensational things. Like I don't try to get attention with sensational titles, and I don't say sensational things. Every other word out of my mouth isn't shock value or an F-bomb or a political rabble-rousing and just trying to get people all burned up and steamed up about things. The popularity of my show and the growth has been slow burn. It's slow and steady, and I think that I will have a much tighter listenership, a much tighter bond with you, the listener, in doing that, rather than just saying crazy, wild things. Because I can say crazy, wild and things. I'm perfectly capable of doing that. I could start another podcast that's very political. But we don't need that now. Do we need that now in 2020 going into 2021? Do we need more of that? I'm not saying that it's not important to have political discourse and discussion. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, do I need to do that? Do I need to add to it? Some people say, not to get too sidetracked here, but welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. Some people say that you should make your voice heard. Like I'll say on Facebook or something like that. I really wanted to weigh on this, but I don't think Facebook is the right platform for it. Blah, blah, blah. And all people are commenting, you need to say it. You need to have your voice heard and blah, blah, blah. But my voice isn't any different. What I'm going to say isn't anything different than anybody else is going to say. All it's going to be is inflammatory and piss somebody off. So what is my motivation to say it? Is my motivation to say it to actually try to help things? Or is it just to piss people off? And I guarantee you that 99.9% of whatever you read on Twitter or Facebook or any kind of social media or any kind of op-ed piece or editorial from whatever quote-unquote news source you read, it's not to inform you about anything. It's to piss you off. So why would I add to that chorus of hatred? I'm going to do my thing over here on Geek Therapy Radio. Slow burn, slow, steady burn of listeners from every political walk of life, every race of life, every sexual orientation of life. You could be a space alien from the planet Zorbach. I don't care, because we're all geeks about something, and that's the common bond we have, and that's the slow burn that I'm trying to spread. I'm trying to pass a little candle to a new listener, another new listener, another new listener. Here, take this little flame. Let's just spread this out throughout the world that, hey, we have a lot more in common than what divides us. I don't need to get behind this microphone every time that I do a podcast or radio show and continue to incite and pour gasoline on a fire. That doesn't make me unique. That makes me a follower. That makes me a lemming. I know that I can make this podcast, this radio show, so much more lucrative if I just towed the line. If I just said what everyone else is saying. Just tap into that emotional response of people. Tap into it. Even of business owners, just tap into that. Tap into what I believe, and I will sponsor your show, basically. I'm not saying that they are effectively thinking that, but that's kind of what people in my business do. They regurgitate, it's called the echo chamber, regurgitate what their constituency is saying, what they're fired up about. So they're not adding any sort of benefit. They're not healing anything. They're just adding to the fire. They're just throwing gas on the fire because it's popular, because it gets listens and clicks, because it's like-minded individuals. It's a slow burn to tell people in this podcast, leave that at the door and let's talk about some Star Wars or telescopes or astronomy or science or DaVinci Resolve or Macs or graphics cards or painting or knitting or photography or filmmaking, whatever. It's not sexy. It's not sexy and clicky. So I say all that huge rant, getting off topic at the end of the podcast. I say all that because I truly appreciate every single one of you on board with me for this. Because I know I'm not the flashy one out there screaming and throwing gasoline on a fire that doesn't need any more gasoline. So I appreciate every single one of you along with me for the slow burn, because you don't have to listen every day. A lot of you email me, say you listen every day. That boggles my mind that I could be doing this, talking into this microphone and have you engaged every single time I release a podcast, that I see the numbers growing slowly but surely. I just really appreciate you. I really, really appreciate you. I'm not going to plug what I should plug at the end of the show. I'll just say, if you want to find out more about anything, go to geektherapyradio.com. I'm not going to ask for your money. I'm not going to, you don't have to give me anything. I'll reiterate again, when you fill out a form on geektherapyradio.com, the first thing you see, what are you a geek about? It's not mailing list. It's just a message to me. That's all it is. I so much appreciate your involvement, your engagement, that you listen to me, even if you listen to me and you never email me. I know you're out there. I appreciate you. Just your time. So much is distracting you for your time these days, and I appreciate that you listen to Geek Therapy Radio with all of my heart. Thank you so much. You are worthy of love. You are absolutely worthy of love. You are worthy of giving love. You are worthy of receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-respect. We go through these things in our lives sometimes, whether it's a divorce or a breakup or a death in the family or something terrible, and the voice in our head has this way of lying to us, saying, you are unworthy. See, this bad thing happened to you because you are unworthy of love. That's false. Do not let that amplify in your head. You are worthy of love. I'm telling you, you are worthy of love. Giving, receiving love, and you are also worthy of your own freaking self-respect. Stand up. Shut that voice down. You are worthy of your own self-respect. Thank you so much for listening to Geek Therapy Radio. I cannot wait to talk to you in the next one. Take care.